Control your dog, or I'll do it for you. That's what Officer Harper said moments before pulling the trigger. In broad daylight, in the middle of her own neighborhood. And just like that, Alana Brooks' loyal service dog was gone. No warning, no crime, just a leash and the wrong color of skin. Racist story. Cop kills black woman's dog, but she's a war hero with a secret plan. Isn't just a tale of tragedy, it's a reckoning. Mark Twain once said, "The truth has no defense against a fool determined to believe a lie." But Alana didn't stay silent. She turned grief into strategy, and a leash into a line no one would cross again. If you believe stories like this matter, your voice matters too. Subscribe to the channel, drop a comment to let us know what you feel, and share this with someone who still believes accountability should wear a badge too. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm orange hue over the quiet streets of Willow Creek. It was the kind of suburban neighborhood where lawns were always trimmed, porches were decorated for the season, and people waved at each other from driveways. It looked perfect on the surface, but Alana Brooks knew better. Perfection was often the best hiding place for rot. She walked at a steady pace along the sidewalk, the leash in her hand slack but secure. Tango, her 6-year-old German shepherd, matched her stride perfectly, alert, loyal, and calm. He'd been with her since her last tour, the only living soul who had seen her at her worst and never judged her. To Alana, he wasn't just a dog. He was family. She wore a plain white t-shirt tucked into military green tactical pants, the kind she'd worn every day for years. It wasn't a uniform anymore, but it still felt like armor. Civilians saw it as casual, but to her, it was readiness, even in a place like this. A white SUV rolled past, then slowed. Alana's eyes flicked toward it, her body instinctively tensing. She had been out of Delta Force for 8 months, but the situational awareness never left. She could feel eyes watching her through the tinted windows, judging her, calculating. The SUV stopped completely at the end of the block. She recognized it: local police. Not unusual for a slow cruise in a sleepy neighborhood, but the way it idled there, that wasn't routine. Tango let out a soft rumble. Not a growl, a warning. "Easy, boy," Alana murmured, giving the leash a light tug. The door opened, and out stepped Officer Derek Barnes, mid-40s, square jaw, buzz cut, the type who smirked when he asked questions he already thought he knew the answer to. His partner, Sean Harper, followed close behind, younger, jumpier, hand already too close to his hip. "Evening," Barnes said, walking toward her with practiced casualness. "Mind if we ask you a few questions?" Alana stopped, keeping Tango at her side. "Sure," she said calmly, her voice neutral. "Is there a problem?" Harper scanned her up and down like he was looking for a reason to escalate. "We got a call about someone suspicious walking a large dog. Said they didn't recognize the woman. You live around here?" Alana nodded once. "I do." Barnes tilted his head. "Funny. We patrol this neighborhood often. Don't think I've seen you before." "I travel for work," she replied. "Private security consulting. Just got back this week." Harper snorted. "Security consulting? That like mercenary work?" She gave a half smile. "Depends who's asking." Barnes didn't laugh. He stepped closer. "We're gonna need to see some ID." Her fingers twitched slightly, but she stayed still. "Am I being detained?" "Not yet," Harper said quickly, his voice sharp. Tango shifted, sensing the tension. His eyes locked on Harper, who now had his thumb resting on the safety strap of his holster. Alana reached slowly into her back pocket, pulling out her wallet. She held it out for them to see. Barnes took it, glanced at the license, then looked back at her. "Says you're ex-military." "I am," she said. "Delta Force." Harper gave a short, dismissive laugh. "Well, isn't that something?" The insult wasn't subtle. Neither was the sneer in his voice. The leash in her hand tightened slightly, as Tango tensed again. "Look," she said, her voice still even. "I don't want any trouble. My dog's well trained. I've done nothing wrong." Barnes stepped to the side, flanking her. "Maybe. But we can't be too careful. Big dog like that? He dangerous? He's protective, she answered firmly. Not dangerous, unless you are. And then it happened. Tango took one small step forward, sensing her shift in breath, her unspoken discomfort. Harper reacted like a gun had gone off. He reached for his weapon, and time slowed. Don't? Alana shouted. But the crack of the shot shattered the air. Tango yelped, a terrible, choked sound, and collapsed to the ground. Alana dropped to her knees, her hands trembling as she grabbed for him. Blood pooled around his fur, warm and fast. Her voice broke. No, 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 Tango, stay with me. Barnes stood frozen. Harper held the smoking gun in his hand, breathing fast, already trying to justify it to himself. I thought he was attacking, he stammered. Alana looked up at them, her hands covered in blood, her expression hollow. You don't know what you've just done, she whispered. In that moment, the woman they saw as just another civilian, just another black face in a white neighborhood, was gone. What remained was a soldier who had buried brothers in arms, and now she would bury them with the truth. Alana's hands were still slick with Tango's blood when the handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists. You're being detained for obstruction and failure to comply, Harper said coldly, not meeting her eyes. Barnes stood nearby, arms crossed, jaw clenched, not from guilt, but from annoyance, as if she had somehow made their day harder. She didn't struggle. She didn't yell. She didn't even blink. Her mind had already gone somewhere else, somewhere colder. They pulled her to her feet, dragging her away from Tango's body, still lying motionless on the sun-warmed concrete. Her knees buckled for a second, not from weakness but from instinct, to go back to him, to hold him just a little longer, but they yanked her forward. The neighborhood watched from behind curtains and doorways. No one came outside. No one said a word, not even a whisper. The squad car door slammed shut behind her, and the silence inside was suffocating. The air conditioner blasted cold air, but it couldn't cut through the burning in her chest. At the station, they processed her like any other suspect. Mugshot, fingerprints, a blank form where threat level was marked as moderate. Not a single officer acknowledged the blood on her clothes, the trauma in her eyes, the truth in her silence. They locked her in a holding cell, white walls, steel bench, flickering fluorescent light overhead. She sat there, motionless, her mind replaying the gunshot over and over. Tango's final sound, his eyes, his fall. She didn't cry. She couldn't. Hours passed. Then footsteps, heels, sharp, confident. The door opened, and there stood Jasmine Brooks. Alana's older sister was a civil rights attorney with a reputation for dismantling entire systems one case at a time. Today, she was dressed like a weapon, sleek black pantsuit, leather briefcase, and a glare that could crack granite. You're done holding her, Jasmine snapped at the officer behind her. And if you don't let her out in the next 60 seconds, I'm filing an emergency injunction and a civil suit against this entire department. The officer hesitated. You think I'm bluffing? Jasmine said, shoving a stack of papers into his chest. You assaulted an unarmed woman, illegally detained her, and shot her dog without cause, without a warrant, and with no justification. Alana stood, still silent. Jasmine's eyes softened slightly. You okay? She asked. Alana nodded once. They walked out together, past the same front desk where no one met their eyes, out into the sunlight. But it didn't feel freeing. Nothing did. Inside Jasmine's car, the silence stretched. You want to talk about it? Jasmine asked gently. No, Alana replied, staring out the window. Do you remember what happened? I remember everything. Jasmine's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Then let's sue the hell out of them. We'll go public. Rally the press. Hit 'em where it hurts. Alana shook her head slowly. They'll spin it. Say he lunged. Say I didn't follow commands. But they shot your dog, Alana. You weren't resisting. There are witnesses. Alana turned to her. And how many times have witnesses mattered? Jasmine opened her mouth to reply, then closed it. That night, Alana sat alone on the floor of her living room, Tango's collar in her hands. The jingle of his tags echoed in her mind like a heartbeat that wouldn't quit. Her house felt like a tomb, quiet, cold, hollow. The leash still hung by the door, his food bowl still full. Everything was just as it had been, except he was gone. She looked down at the collar, then over at the locked cabinet across the room. Inside was a flash drive. And on that flash drive, records, logs, videos. During her time as a private security consultant, she'd worked with agencies that contracted directly with law enforcement. She knew how departments covered things up. She knew how body cams malfunctioned, how reports were rewritten, how complaints vanished. And she had proof, years of, including one contract where she'd helped build an AI-driven accountability system that was shelved because it worked too well. She'd always told herself it wasn't her fight. Now it was personal. The next morning she was up before dawn. She didn't go for a walk. She sat at her computer, pulling up case files on Officers Barnes and Harper, dozens of complaints. Excessive force, racial profiling, missing footage, every time, the same outcome. Cleared, exonerated, back on duty. It wasn't negligence. It was design. They had been protected. But now they weren't dealing with a frightened civilian. They had no idea who they'd just cornered. She wasn't going to scream on social media. She wasn't going to beg for justice. She was going to build it. Alana leaned back in her chair, the screen's blue glow lighting her face. Barnes, Harper, you shot the wrong dog, and you messed with the wrong woman. The rain came down hard 3 nights later, masking the sound of tires gliding quietly down a side street in Southridge. Alana Brooks sat in the driver's seat of a beat-up black sedan parked across an old Irish bar, the kind of place where off-duty cops drank cheap whiskey and swapped war stories they never earned. Officer Derek Barnes had a pattern. Wednesday nights always arrived just before 8 p.m., parked his city-issued cruiser around the back, and left 3 hours later, drunk and arrogant, laughing too loudly, as if the world owed him something. Alana watched him now through the rain-speckled windshield. He was sitting at his usual corner stool, talking too close to the waitress, gesturing with a hand that should never have been handed a badge. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. She just memorized. His posture, his habits, the way he leaned when he laughed, the time he got up to use the restroom. She logged it all quiet, calculating, unblinking. Tango would have been proud. At 11:12 p.m. he finally staggered out, his jacket thrown over his shoulder, the top buttons of his uniform shirt undone like he thought it made him charming. The alley of the bar was narrow, poorly lit, and invisible from the street. Perfect. Alana moved. By the time Barnes reached his cruiser, she was already there, waiting. The alley swallowed them both in shadow. Barnes didn't even notice her until it was too late. "Hey!" he barked, spinning, his hand flying to his sidearm. But she was faster. A sharp blow to the wrist sent his gun clattering to the wet pavement. Another to the ribs bent him in half. He gasped, wheezing, caught between pain and confusion. She grabbed him by the collar, slammed him against the brick wall. His feet slid on the slick concrete as she leaned in, face inches from his. "You remember the dog?" she whispered, voice calm but edged with steel. Juan Aaron's blinked rapidly, eyes wide, rain mixing with blood on his lip. "Tango," she said. "You killed him." He stared at her, uncomprehending at first. Then recognition hit like a hammer. "You," he breathed. "You're the... I'm the one you thought would stay quiet." She let go. He crumpled to the ground, groaning. "Don't worry," she said, backing away. "This isn't revenge." She pointed up toward the barely visible blinking red light mounted in the gutter above. "It's documentation." He followed her gaze. The camera was real. The footage was already uploading. The audio was clean. Every word, every action, every bruise. Barnes scrambled to his feet, slipping in the puddles. "You're crazy," he spat. "You think anyone's going to believe a psycho like you over 2 decorated officers?" Alana didn't respond. She just walked away. And he knew somewhere deep beneath the fear and alcohol that he had just lost control of the narrative. The next morning, the footage went live, not to the public yet, just to the right inboxes, internal affairs. A civil rights journalist from a major outlet, an activist lawyer who ran a watchdog account with 500,000 followers. Alana knew the system didn't respond to truth. It responded to heat. So she lit the match. By noon, the precinct buzzed with rumors. Officers whispering in hallways, desks quiet. Barnes looked over his shoulder every few minutes, hands shaking when he reached for his coffee. Harper, meanwhile, hadn't been touched yet, but he could feel the storm coming. He confronted Barnes in the locker room. "What the hell did you do?" Harper hissed. "They're asking questions, Derek, about March 12th, about the dog." Barnes avoided his eyes. "She's not going to go public. If she had anything real, she'd have done it by now." "Are you sure?" Harper demanded. Barnes hesitated. Too long. Harper slammed his locker shut. "She's setting us up, man. You need to fix this. Now." That night, Barnes parked outside Alana's house. He sat in the car for nearly an hour, just staring, lights off, engine running. She watched him from the window, completely still. Tango's collar sat on the table beside her. She didn't call the police. She didn't record. She just waited. Eventually, he drove off. But he'd left his fear behind. The cracks were forming. The masks were slipping. And Alana? She was just getting started. The pounding on Alana's front door came just after midnight. She didn't flinch. She was already dressed, black hoodie jeans, boots laced tight, her hair was tied back. The living room lights were dimmed, Tango's collar still resting on the table, a silent witness. Another knock, louder, angrier. "Open the damn door, Brooks," Barnes' voice barked through the wood, laced with panic. She took a slow breath and unlocked it. When the door swung open, both Barnes and Harper stood on her porch, soaked from the rain, eyes wild with desperation. Harper's hand was resting too close to his belt. Barnes's face was flushed, lips pressed tight. "We need to talk," Barnes snapped. "Do you have a warrant?" Alana asked calmly. "No, but—" "Then you need to leave." Barnes stepped forward, shoving her shoulder with one hand. "Cut the crap. We know what you're doing." The force knocked her back a step. She didn't resist, didn't react. Harper followed them in, pushing the door closed behind him. "You think you're clever?" Barnes growled. "Sending that footage to the press? Leaking files that don't even prove anything? You think you're gonna ruin us?" Alana said nothing. Her eyes locked on Barnes, cold and unmoving. "You better stop this now," Harper added, trying to sound threatening, but his voice cracked under the pressure. Alana tilted her head slightly. "Or what?" "Or we'll make sure you regret it," Barnes hissed, stepping close again. "You think people care about some dead mutt? You think they'll take your word over ours? You're nothing. You're just another angry—" His words cut off when her hand shot forward. Not a punch. She tossed something onto the coffee table, a small flash drive. "What's that?" Harper asked. "The rest," she said simply. Barnes looked down, confused. "That footage you've seen. It's just the beginning," she continued. "I've got every complaint you've ever buried. Every body cam that was mysteriously corrupted. Every report, every victim silenced. I've got it all, and it's already backed up." "You're bluffing," Harper spat. "No," she said. "I'm documenting." Barnes grabbed her by the hoodie, jerking her forward. "You don't scare me." "Good," Alana replied, her voice low, "because you should be scared of what happens next." She pulled away calmly, walking to the couch and sitting down like they weren't even in the room. "You've already lost," she said. "You just haven't accepted it yet." They stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. Then Harper turned toward the door. "We should go," he muttered. Barnes hesitated, eyes burning into hers, then finally followed. When the door slammed shut behind them, Alana exhaled for the first time in minutes. Her hands trembled slightly, but she steadied them. She pulled out her phone and tapped a contact. It rang once. "Jasmine," she said when her sister picked up. "They came to my house. It's escalating." "I'm calling it in," Jasmine said immediately. "They crossed the line. I'll have a camera crew there by sunrise." "No," Alana said. "Not yet. Let them hang themselves first." The next day, everything shifted. A local reporter leaked the body cam footage, edited only for privacy, but raw enough to shake the city. It showed Harper firing at Tango, showed Alana with her hands up, showed the calm restraint and the brutality. Within hours, it went viral. Justice for Tango trended on every platform. The mayor issued a statement. The police chief announced an internal investigation. Barnes and Harper were placed on administrative leave. But Alana wasn't finished. She filed a formal civil rights lawsuit through Jasmine's firm, naming both officers, the department and the city. They pushed back. They spun stories. They claimed Alana had provoked them, but every step they took made it worse. More footage, more complaints, more witnesses stepping forward. A week later, Alana was called into a closed-door meeting with Internal Affairs. They offered her a settlement, quiet money to walk away. She declined without hesitation. "No amount of money will undo what they did," she said. "I don't want compensation. I want accountability." The IA officer nodded slowly. "You understand what you're doing, right? This doesn't end at a press conference. This is war." Alana leaned forward. "Good. I've fought worse ones." Outside the station, Jasmine waited on the steps. "How bad?" she asked. "They're scared," Alana said, "but not nearly enough." The clouds were starting to break above the city. But the storm, it was just getting started. The courtroom was packed, not with just lawyers and reporters, but with regular people, mothers, veterans, neighbors, students, people who had seen the footage, people who had shared it, cried over it, raged at it, people who showed up not for Alana Brooks, but for what she represented, the line drawn in the sand. At the front of the courtroom, Alana sat at the plaintiff's table next to her sister Jasmine, who was sharp in her gray blazer, surrounded by binders and files like weapons ready for battle. Across from them sat Barnes and Harper, their suits crisp but their faces gaunt, pale, like the reality had finally caught up to them. The judge entered. A hush fell over the room. "All rise." The trial began. Jasmine stood first, calm and commanding. Her opening statement wasn't loud, but it cut like a blade. She painted the picture: a decorated veteran, walking her dog in her own neighborhood, harassed and brutalized by the very people sworn to protect her. And then she pressed play. The footage played on the screen above the judge's bench. The courtroom watched as Tango stood calmly, watched as Alana complied, watched as Harper raised his weapon, watched as the gunshot echoed and the deg fell. No one made a sound. Barnes and Harper's lawyer tried to argue officer safety, uncertain behavior, misunderstood commands, but every excuse was shredded by evidence, by expert witnesses, by Jasmine's relentless cross-examination. Then came Alana's turn to speak. She took the stand, steady, unflinching. Her voice didn't tremble. Her hands didn't shake. "My dog's name was Tango," she said. "He wasn't a weapon. He wasn't a threat. He was the one thing that kept me grounded when I came back from war." She paused, her voice tightening. "I've been deployed in war zones. I've faced armed insurgents in alleyways, in foreign countries with no backup and no cover. But I have never felt more afraid than I did that day right here, in my own neighborhood, at the hands of men wearing American badges." The gallery was silent. "I didn't fight back that day, not because I couldn't, but because I shouldn't have to. I didn't escalate. They did, and they did it because I didn't look like I belonged." The defense attorney tried to shake her, accused her of being militant, of looking for attention. Alana leaned into the mic and said, one sentence that silenced the room: "I didn't pick this fight. They brought it to my front door." The closing arguments came quickly. Jasmine reminded the jury that this wasn't just about a dog or a wrongful arrest. It was about unchecked power and the refusal to stay silent. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty. On excessive force, on civil rights violations, on falsifying reports. The judge's voice was steady as he delivered the sentence. Barnes and Harper would face federal charges, disgraced, stripped of their badges, and facing civil damages so steep they'd never wear a uniform or walk with power again. Jasmine squeezed Alana's hand. Outside, the crowd erupted. Reporters swarmed. Microphones reached out like vipers. "Ms. Brooks, how does it feel?" Alana paused. She looked out at the crowd, saw the signs, the supporters, the strangers who stood for something larger than themselves. "They got what they deserved," she said simply. Then she walked away, not into anonymity, but into purpose. Weeks passed. The headlines faded, but the movement didn't. Alana used the settlement money not for herself, but to start a nonprofit, Tango, named in honor of her partner. It focused on training dogs for veterans, but also on documenting police misconduct using smart technology and AI. It spread faster than anyone expected. And late one evening, as the sun dipped below the hills of Willow Creek, Alana stood at a small memorial stone in her backyard. Tango, loyal to the end. She crouched down, brushing her hand across the engraved name. "You'd have loved the fight, boy," she whispered, "but I finished it for both of us." She stood, turned toward the house, and walked back inside. This time, she didn't look back. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words echo through stories like Alana's, where silence would have been safer, but justice demanded action. Anu reminds us that true courage isn't just found on battlefields overseas, but in the quiet, dangerous choice to speak up when the world would rather you stay silent. It teaches us that healing doesn't always come from courts or cameras, but from reclaiming your voice and using it for something greater than yourself. If this story moved you, don't just scroll away. Join me. Like this video. If you believe in truth, leave a comment to share your thoughts or experiences. Your voice matters, and hit that subscribe button. Not just for more stories, but because together, we're building a space where voices like Alana's are heard, honored, and never forgotten.